Okay, and we're live. Awesome.
Right.
Hello, everyone. Here today with Rafael Polendo. Friends call him Ralph. So welcome, Ralph.
Thanks for having me.
He is in the beautiful California, in his new country abode, and I'm in the Midwest. And wherever you are, if you're watching the replay, we're so glad you're with us. You probably had a nudge on your heart to write a book. So tonight, Ralph is going to save you so much time and energy and misery. He's going to share with us tonight the one mistake that most authors make with their manuscript, and three, not just one, but three ways to avoid it.
Yeah, 3 for the price of 1. So don't say Meg doesn't give you value.
So this is a huge opportunity for people that are joining us.
It's exciting to know there's folks out there who feel compelled and feel passionate about writing a book, but are maybe a little stuck. And so it's always exciting to be able to encourage and speak into people's lives and hopefully give them the nudge that they need to take their project to the next level. So.
Yeah, and you are the perfect person to do that because you are the owner of Quoir, who's not only about books, they're about podcasts and future CDs and future films. Just yours, Quoir. We're going to put the link below to Ralph and Taylor Polendo's company. And he's also a creative guru whose CV is beyond impressive. I'll put all the links for you to get to know him and his company below this video. We're going to wait a bit before others join us to watch this, to be a part of this conversation. So go ahead, if you're watching the replay, fast forward to, fast forward 3 minutes from now, if you will. And while we're waiting for some friends to hop on with us, we have a shared love of the movie I Love You, Man.
Yes.
And I have 3 behind the scenes facts that I wanted to share with you.
All right, bring it.
One of them was, did you know the band Rush, sorry, the band.
Very different bands.
Very, very different bands. Did you know that the band Rush, not Tool, they were supposed to just come and shoot their concert for the movie, but because they're such nice people, they stayed and did a private show for the cast and crew.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So are you saying the entire cast and crew got Rushified?
Basically, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, did you know that fact?
I did not. No, that's great.
Okay, let me see if you know this next one. The next fact about the beloved movie I Love You, Man is that the screenplay sat on the shelf of the writer for 11 years before he moved it to producing and making it into a movie.
Yeah, did not know that either. But that is a very pertinent fun fact for this discussion.
Very pertinent. It makes the last fun fact not as exciting.
You should have saved the second one for the last.
I should have switched the order. I'm realizing this now. Usually with guests on Facebook Live, I ask them, so what did you do yesterday that made you smile? But I thought with you and Taylor and your love for this movie, I should look up some stuff. So
yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we'll just save the fun fact till later in the evening if it's needed, because it's not as impressive as the fact that this.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, totally. So without further ado, I'd like to invite everyone that's joining us to post comments and questions below. Tag me in them tag Rafael as well if you would like. If we don't get to them, if you want to tag us later, that is fine as well. We will try to get to those questions and comments at the end of our time together. Yeah. And so as I already introduced, I'm going to introduce them again for people that just joined. Rafael Polendo owns Quoir, and they publish books and podcasts and future CDs, future films. I'm missing a certain type of media that you work with.
Online courses, maybe.
Oh yeah, that I help with. This is the second time we've been on an interview that I forgot that.
Yeah. I feel like it's just a running stick every time. Yeah, just keep it going.
Totally. Can I argue that I'm just such a humble Christian that I forget?
That's definitely. No, yeah. You're the most humble. Yeah.
That's not true. I can't argue that. And so along with his work of founding Quoir in 2015, 2 decades before that, he's been in marketing and is a creative guru and has so many skill sets and gifts to offer. And we're so excited he's here tonight to share with us the one mistake that authors make with manuscripts and the 3 ways, not 1, but 3 ways to avoid that mistake. So
Yes.
without further ado, I'm going to mute myself so I can listen and learn.
All right. I will say with the caveat, as owning Quoir and going through all the manuscript submissions that come our way, I will say this is not the only mistake authors make, but it's definitely the most prevalent, at least in my experience. So your mileage may vary. Other publishers may disagree, but from my perspective, this seems to be the consistent mistake that most authors make, and not just new authors, seasoned authors as well. So the number 1 mistake is, and write this down if you're ready, drum roll, is not knowing your audience.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. Should we pause for dramatic effect? Let that sink in.
Oh, snap. Yeah, I have made that mistake. Totally.
So not knowing your audience. And what do I mean by that? It's not merely just knowing, oh, this book is written for children, or this book is written for teenagers, or having a general sense. That's important. But it's really knowing not just the age group, but other demographic factors as well. So what's important about knowing your audience is it gives you an understanding of how they think, how they're going to process your information, how they're going to receive it, what particular lenses they may filter it through. I'm assuming the purpose in writing your book is you want to communicate something to an audience. You may have all the best intentions in what you're trying to communicate, but if it's not actually received in the manner that you're hoping, then you've kind of missed the point of doing that process. So it's really important to, as much as possible, define your audience in as specific terms as you can. And I'll explain what that means more as we get into the 3 ways to alleviate this problem. But that's really the big overarching point that I want to make.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of how many authors and content creators I know, and that I'm going to finish that thought. And I know where I was 4 to 5 years ago. And I wonder if it comes from, I've heard so many authors say, and I was one of them, I'm not a marketer. I'm just a writer, and it's good. So my work will speak for itself. I don't need to market. And I think that this is obviously, this knowing your audience gets into, not only will it help you write better, but it will also help you market better. And so I wonder how many authors come into the game with that mindset of, I'm not a marketer, I'm not in it for the money. That mentality leads to this mistake. That's a question. Leads to this mistake?
Yeah, it's what's interesting about it is another aspect of what you're talking about is kind of putting the cart before the horse as well. So some folks will think, maybe folks who are comfortable in marketing will think, oh, I can market anything. But really, it has to start with your content. Your content has to be as high quality as it can be. And the more that it's tailored to your custom audience, the easier the marketing is going to be. And so if you're someone who thinks you have marketing down pat, then really you need to focus on your content to make sure that your marketing efforts are going to pay off. And if you're someone who fears marketing, you really need to make sure that your content is geared towards your audience, because it's going to make marketing that much easier and that much less of a headache. If that makes sense.
Oh yes, that makes perfect sense. That's so helpful. So what is the first way that we can avoid this mistake?
All right. So the first tip I have is you want to meet them where they are. And that may sound like a simple term. It's much more difficult to implement in practice. What I mean by that is, let's assume that you're writing a book. So most of our authors work in the kind of religious deconstruction space. So they're writing to people typically who have come from a particular branch or form of spirituality or Christianity, and they are trying to challenge or expand or get them to consider an alternate way of viewing something. The problem is they have to meet their audience where they're at. And so first they have to determine, is the person I'm writing to at the very beginning of this process? have they not even begun this process yet, and I'm the first shot across the bow, whichever way? Am I the catalyst to get them to start questioning, or have they already begun questioning, or have they already explored multiple options and I'm just another option within the options they're exploring? The reason you need to define that is because that's going to change significantly how you write the book and how you address the reader, so to speak, in the pages. So let's say, for instance, I'm writing a book to somebody who is just beginning to question their inherited beliefs. And yet I've been 5-10 years removed from those inherited beliefs onto a different path. And I'm trying to show them what this new path can look like. If I don't take the time to go back in my history and my past to use the language that they're using and the definitions that they're using for those concepts, so that I'm meeting them where they're at and then leading them forward, I'm going to lose them. Because if I start talking where I'm at 5-10 years down the line, but forgetting that they're still 5-10 years behind, we're not going to understand each other. So one simple example of that we actually had with an author of ours is he was writing a book that was dealing with understanding a new way to process Christian relationships, interpersonal relationships. It was a phenomenal book. It was, I think, groundbreaking in a lot of ways. One of the problems that he had is what he said to us is that the people that he's writing to are folks who maybe are just starting to question some of their inherited beliefs about cross-gender relationships and friendships and that sort of thing. And so they're just kind of on the cusp of that. And at one point in his book, he had inserted a reference to God as she. And that was just the only reference in the book. There was no explanation behind it. There was no, theological underpinning, nothing like that. Now, I want to be clear and say, I don't believe that God has a gender. God is not he or she. I have no problem referring to God as she. I think that's actually more theologically accurate to be fluid in those pronouns in reference to God, because God is genderful. However, that being said, because his book was not addressing that specifically, and because his book was written to an audience who would likely see that as a stumbling block or see that as a point of contention that would distract from the overall point he was making, we suggested to him, this may not be the best place to just lob that in here. And so he took it out, he agreed. And I think the thinking that has to go behind that is, if I'm trying to share an argument with someone and I insert something that's going to derail the conversation or take their focus off of what I'm trying to present, then that's not going to help the purpose of my book overall, even if that little thing that I'm adding in is valid or worthy. Does that make sense as an example?
Oh, perfect example. And before you even gave that example, I was thinking of one of your guests on your show, the Heretic Happy Hour, that little podcast of yours that's about to hit 300,000 downloads. On that podcast, you all interviewed Sarah Bessey,
Mm-hmm.
she's a feminist, and she shared that she intentionally, in that book, she viewed that book as a bridge to her future works, and she intentionally wanted to meet her audience where they were, and she referred, even though she too thinks God is genderful, she referred to God as he on purpose because of the same exact reason. So that makes perfect sense, to be intentional in where your audience is on the journey you're taking them, to meet them right where they are.
Exactly. And there's a lot of times where authors will use a phrase or a word that they haven't properly defined for their audience. And they may see that phrase or word and completely understand what it means. They know all the nuances and all the history and baggage that come with it, but their audience doesn't. And so it can be difficult to take a step back and place yourself in their shoes, but you need to do that as much as possible so that you can be sure that you're bringing them along in the journey, rather than shouting at them from across a canyon and they're missing the message that you're trying to share.
Oh, that's so good, man. You're saving people so much time and money tonight with these tips. This is exciting.
Let's hope so. Is it time for number 2?
Yes, tip number 2, and a reminder to our friends watching, please put any comments or questions in the thread. Apparently there's a Keith Giles guy that has commented, what does this guy know?
Never heard of him.
Karen Leedy from the Heresy After Hours group said, knowledge is power. And Keith says it was Matthew DiStefano, wasn't it? I'm wondering if he's talking about your book reference, which I don't think it was. So,
No, it wasn't Matthew. I'll never
so
tell.
never, it's a secret. The secret of an amazing book that was very helpful to me, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Tip number 2.
Okay, tip number 2, and this one comes from a friend of mine who is a well-established author, has written several bestsellers, is you want to anticipate questions and rebuttals that the reader may have. Now, some of my comments aren't going to work for fiction necessarily. So if you're a fiction writer, I apologize. It's still important to know your audience and to craft a story around that. But predominantly what I'm talking about has to do with nonfiction works. So you want to anticipate questions and rebuttals. What that looks like is, so I'll take a step back. For each of these 3 suggestions I have, each of them are going into a deeper level of knowing and understanding your audience. And all 3 are going to go into much harder territory. So the first one's fairly easy. The second one's a little more difficult. So what you want to think as you're writing your book, if you make a statement that is fairly challenging, or you're presenting some information that you know may be controversial or new for your audience, what you want to try and do is, again, take a step back and anticipate what questions or rebuttals may they have towards the statement that you're making. And what's powerful about that is it allows you to then, within your text itself, address the reader. That could be done directly or indirectly. Directly would look like, you make a statement and then you could say, I know some of you may be thinking XYZ about this, but let me tell you why, it's better, or why it makes sense. Or, and by doing that, what you're doing is you're showing the reader that you're empathizing with their position. You're getting inside their head, so to speak. I'm sure you can think of how many times you've read a book that was kind of expanding your mind in some different areas, and the author drops a truth bomb and you immediately think of, well, yeah, but what about this? And they never address it. And you're left frustrated, curious. You have to go somewhere else to figure out the answer, or you just abandon it altogether and think it's not valid because they didn't consider this. So as an author, you have an opportunity to try and get inside the mind of your audience, to anticipate those questions and rebuttals, and then utilize the text itself to answer those. The other benefit is that if you do that within the text itself, it comes off much more powerfully than if you just left them with the statement, because then they're going to feel like you've connected with them, that you understand them, that you understand their thought process, and that they're being heard, even though this is a one-way conversation basically. But by doing that, you're as much as possible, you're bringing dialogue into the work.
That is so powerful, because I have read, yeah, you're exactly right. I have read books where that did not happen. and I did feel like I was having coffee with someone, and halfway through their latte, they just got up and left.
And left with the bill, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, tell me more. What about?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah,
that is.
it may seem like a daunting task, and it does require extra work, but the benefit is it's a significant opportunity to strengthen, change, or clarify what you're saying. And again, if the purpose of writing a book is to communicate something that the audience receives, then as much as possible, you want to clear away any roadblocks that would hinder that. And so anticipate those questions and rebuttals, insert your answers to those. It doesn't have to be in a rote, question and answer format, but just make sure that you're including responses to what those may be.
And I guess also, depending on the author's style, the author's voice, there are different helpful transitional phrases that one could use. So
yeah, and that's going to be determined by, exactly, your style. Is your book more conversational? Is it more academic? And there's conventions for how to deal with each of those.
Yeah. Ooh, so fun. That's another Facebook Live session right there. Transitional statements for your style of writing. I love it. That's so good. So what is our third tip for not making this one mistake?
Yeah. Now, number 3 is the one we put behind the paywall, where you have to charge people like $50 to get access to it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But today only, we're going to give this one away for free. So number 3, and again, these increase in difficulty. Number 3 is seek focus group feedback. Here's why this one's difficult. It's not difficult to round up a handful of people and ask them what they think about your book. That's fairly easy. The difficult part is, one, finding the right group of people. You don't want to find people who are just avid supporters of yours, who are just going to agree with whatever you say and love your work. That's not going to push you. That's not going to poke holes in your arguments. This is another reason why it's very important to understand clearly your audience from the get-go, because at this point, if you're soliciting focus group feedback, you want to find people who fit exactly the audience that you're going after. The age group, the particular gender, if it's geared towards a gender, socioeconomic status, whatever the case may be, whoever you're gearing your book towards, these are the people you want to hear from, because you want to hear how they're receiving the content. Here's the other thing that makes it difficult, is too often when we get focus group feedback, we'll take exactly what they say and apply it to our work. That doesn't always work, and it's not always beneficial. Here's why. I'll illustrate with a quote. It's typically attributed to Henry Ford. I don't know exactly who said it, but he said, allegedly, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Have you heard that one before?
From you, which you quoted that to me when we were redoing the pitch for the I Am My Own Sanctuary online course. And that was such a helpful.
Just a broken record.
I love it. I was laughing so hard because when you said allegedly, all I thought of was Letterkenny and the.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
We'll just leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. That's
leave it at that.
So that continue with your wisdom.
Yeah. So yeah. If Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Obviously, that would not have led to the invention of the automobile. What that quote is trying to illustrate is that when you're soliciting feedback, it's important for you to read between the lines. And here's the most practical way I can phrase it. Listen to their problems, not their solutions. So as a creative for over 20 years now, I've been a designer, and there's many times where you have review sessions for your work and things like that, and people will point out issues and problems. And the classic joke among designers is people will say, oh, make this bigger, make the logo bigger, or make this red, or bold everything. And so they'll give you their solutions, which may or may not be aesthetically pleasing. But the important thing as a designer, as a problem solver, and for you as authors, is you want to read between the lines and listen and try and discern what's the problem that they're addressing rather than their solution for fixing it. The reason that's important is going back to the Henry Ford quote. If people said they wanted a faster horse, rather than making a faster horse, he would realize, oh, they want a quicker means of transportation, a more efficient means of transportation. So that allowed him, as the inventor, to take the problem and develop his own solution to address that. You as the author, when you're listening to focus group feedback and they're saying, well, I think you should have said this here, I think you should have said that here, rather than taking that advice exactly, listen instead and realize, well, what is it? Why is it that they're asking me to do that? What's missing? Or what is the thing that they're trying to connect to? Or, what is the issue that they're having? Why is it that they're suggesting this? And then that allows you as the creative, you as the person who owns the work, who has fashioned and shaped the work and is intimately familiar with it, it allows you then to become the problem solver and to solve the problem that they're having in your unique way, in your voice, in your tone, rather than just putting together a Frankenstein book that at the end of the day, if you try and please everyone, you're probably not going to please anybody. So retain ownership of your work, but be willing to be a problem solver and listen to what people are pointing out, and then adjust and adapt your book accordingly.
I am, that is so helpful. And I wonder too what speaking from experience, not projecting onto anyone because that's never healthy, but I wonder if other authors are like me in that it is uncomfortable to receive feedback. And when we are in an area, when we're in a place of discomfort, and receiving criticism, constructive criticism can be uncomfortable. I've said that a million. That has been established. Right? Point to move on. When we're in that place of discomfort, our brains can't. It's hard to naturally think creatively and to divorce yourself from for the moment, divorce yourself from the product, from your book,
Mhm.
and ask what is their problem they want solved, not their, because that's really helpful and encouraging to give the author or the content creator power to disagree wholeheartedly with their solution and still say, thank you, I received that problem that you want to solve, and I do want to help you solve that problem. So that's really good.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but personally I feel like this approach actually helps with an artist who has difficulty receiving feedback on their work, because as artists we're very protective. We can be very sensitive about our work. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into a product, and you put something out there and someone says they don't like this or change that, and we're very defensive about the thing itself. But to remove that and listen instead to what's the thought behind what they're saying, I think that can help it can help us as creatives not be as prickly or as defensive or as flinching when someone points out a flaw in our work, because we're not listening to the specific thing that they want changed. We're rather listening to a need that they have. And then it becomes exciting and empowering again to realize I can solve that. Let me solve that. That's part of the excitement of being a creative, is problem solving.
Yeah, that's so good. And this tip, like they all have implied, this tip really reminds us as content creators to focus on the people we've been divinely called to serve.
Yeah.
And totally. And also pair that love of serving them with the joy and the fun and the bliss that we feel when we are creating with words.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there are 26 comments.
Now let's make sure that we read between the lines and listen to their problems, not their solutions.
Yes. First and foremost, Carl wants to see what is on your hat.
Oh, North Shore Lifeguard Association. I got to be a part of a training for the North Shore lifeguards, and they gifted us with these hats. So
awesome! Thank you, Carl, for the riveting question. Keep them coming.
I thought for sure Carl was going to ask when his next book is releasing, but
ooh, that's exciting! Oh yes, the tea one, the tea shop, yes.
Yep, and the tea shop.
The tea shop, yeah, about that experience he had. Yeah, I'm excited to help plug that when it comes out. There was Keith Giles, who is another copyright king and marketing expert. He is sharing other tips with people in the comments. So I encourage you, viewer and friend that are watching this with us, to go in the comments and check those out. Keith also says, elevator story, tell the elevator story, exclamation point.
Tell the elevator story. I don't know that one, Keith.
Okay, Keith, you'll have to join us live in this Facebook group, and you can tell that story, and we'll think of some skill set you can share with the members of this group. I'm trying to access all the other comments for some reason. It's not letting me access them. Let me see. We are still, are there any last? I think the majority of them, Carl says, I held back in regards to.
I'm proud of you, Carl.
Yes. Man, friends, I am so sorry. I am clicking on the comments and it's not opening for me. And I'm being a great parent, and my offspring is watching a movie on my phone. So I can't check here. Let me try one more way to get to it.
I can try on my end, maybe.
Man, friends, I am so sorry. Hold up, I think I figured it out. Possibly.
Okay.
I think
okay, I see him. Yeah. So yeah, Keith knows what creatives tend to deal with when people are giving feedback. He said, make the logo bigger. Can we have a star around the button? Can it blink? That's great. Sorry, Keith, I don't know what the elevator story is. So you'll have to remind me about that. Keith says, engineers originally were told that elevators were too slow. Their solution was to add a mirror.
Oh man, that is epic. Wow.
Never heard that one before.
No, and I'm thinking, was that that sounds like you're a tactic to distract an unhappy toddler. um, did, so did it distract them, Keith, or was it to make it appear like they were moving faster?
I don't know. He's gonna have to give more insight.
Yeah.
But Karen, lady, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I know I've seen you in the group before. Her question is, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about working with authors? Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
I have thick skin. I have very I've grown a lot.
Let's see. Favorite thing. I think I get really excited when there's synergy, and I know that's a buzzword we like to make fun of, but I love when there's synergy between us and an author where we're both passionate about their project and what they're putting out there, and we can feed off of each other's energy and creativity. I think that's most exciting. Fortunately, most of, if not all of our authors we've had that with, and it's been true joy and just really fun working to bring projects to life. And actually, I was having a conversation with Carl Forehand the other day, and he was asking if I get as excited about these projects as authors do, as he does, as his book's getting ready. And I told him I feel more like a midwife, where it's not my baby, but I'm helping the process along and doing everything in my power to make sure it's healthy, smooth, delivery and all that. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite thing. Least favorite thing about working with authors. I'll be honest, the authors we don't end up working with, and there's only been a couple where this was the case, is where they have a very inflated ego and a very inflated concept of what their book will accomplish sales wise, marketing wise. We're not interested in working with people that have delusions of grandeur, for lack of a better term. So they tend to be very difficult. They tend to not be based in reality, and you can never end up pleasing them. And so we don't pick up those projects from the get-go. So try to avoid those. Thankfully, none of our authors have had that problem. So.
And I imagine in 5 years of Quoir existing, you've polished that skill of noticing those red flags when people submit manuscripts. And I know that you're on overload right now. There's not overload. Yeah. You're on back. What's the word you use?
Overflow.
Overflow. Yeah. Like you have so many manuscripts. So, but I bet you're better at noticing those red flags.
Yeah, it actually comes up pretty quickly, which I'm thankful for. And it happens kind of in the initial conversations. You can usually tell in the questions they're asking, and you realize, oh, they don't understand what this whole thing is about. So, yeah. But we wish them well.
Yeah, totally.
So Keith gave a clarification. He said, yes, people didn't care about the slowness because they were distracted by their own reflection.
They were primping.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a sermon illustration that applies to in some way.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Totally. Yes. Thank you so much for handling the comments and questions.
No problem. We can tag team it.
Yes. And I would be remiss did I say that right?
Sure.
Talking to fellow word nerd, if I did not mention that you too have a thought-provoking book coming out someday, and it has a very eye-catching title. And of course, since you design gorgeous covers, the cover is very unique. Could you just tell us the title? And because I know it's still evolving and taking shape, but could you tell us the title and the cover, the current cover, or is it too? If it's too soon, I totally understand.
The cover probably won't be able to share yet, but yeah, I've been working on a book for a while, and it's the classic saying, "The carpenter's house is always in disarray." So, who knows if it'll ever get published? Hopefully someday. It's the first rough unedited version of the manuscript is maybe 80% done. But it's basically, how can I give away very little?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. You could just say
No,
the
no,
title.
it's
It really is
no, no, it's
enough.
fine. It's basically going to be a memoir-ish type book of what I've learned over my life, over these 30 some years. But I'm hoping to tie in some unique elements to anchor the story and make it something fairly unique. So that's the goal. We'll see if it ever gets there. The title, so I have always been fascinated by the word cleave because it can mean opposites. It can mean to separate, as in a cleaver knife, or it can mean to bring together, as in, a husband will cleave to his wife. And so one word that can mean two different things. And so the title of the book is Cleavage. And it's going to be a book that kind of talks about deconstruction, reconstruction a little bit, but anchored in the story of my own personal marriage, divorce, remarriage. And I think there's a lot of overlap between the two of separating, coming together, separating, coming together. So yeah, I hope that worked.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Man, I just really hope that you can find a publishing company that is author centered and doesn't mind authors asking questions that rock the boat.
I mean, it's a very risque title, so I don't know if there's any publishers out there that are comfortable with that. So we'll just have to.
Yeah, best of luck to you on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just kidding. That is so exciting, and it's also exciting to think about how your own skill as a writer and communicator has only been enhanced as you have read hundreds of other manuscripts.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you start reading kind of a bunch of manuscripts from different types of authors, different types of topics, and really seeing, you really get better at noticing what works, what doesn't. You get a lot quicker at determining if a book is viable or not, and I think it just comes with the experience. But it's been an interesting process, but it's been a fun process for sure.
Oh, totally. So, friend and viewer that are joining us on your phone or your computer, we're so glad you were here, and you got a gift tonight, a huge gift. We will put the links to Quoir, to Rafael, his personal website. You can find out more about him and what he does, who he is, and then I'm trying to think. There is a podcast episode. It's either, I think, man, there's so many. I think I might go a little crazy with link sharing. I might put, I think I'm going to share the episode on the Listening Chair podcast where you and Taylor shared about Quoir, how it started.
And then Leonidas was in that one too.
Yes, that was so wonderful.
He made an appearance.
Yes, such a treat to hear him. And then I'm also going to share, you guessed it, on AJ Amix's podcast. And you also, I think it was called How to Write a Nonfiction Book. And you give away so many amazing tips for authors and soon to be authors. So
yeah, that was a fun conversation.
Yeah, I might go a little link crazy, and just because I'm such a fan of you and fan of your work. So viewer, enjoy those links below, and tag Ralph, tag myself for any questions or comments, and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. What am I doing? I should ask you, how can people stay in touch with you and the work that you're doing?
You're doing a great job. I just hire you as my promoter. It's
so sorry.
That's totally fine. Yeah, the one-stop shop would be Quoir, and it's spelled strange. It's Quoir.com, and there you can find everything we're involved in. So
yes, so good. Well, thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me. I was honored.
Such a gift, and yeah, I'm so excited for your future book and the books that are going to come from people watching this right now, that you gave them that extra encouragement that they needed.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope it was helpful.
Okay, I'll see you online.
All righty. Take care. Bye, everybody.